Hi, welcome to the lecture on Chapter 11. This one is Project Risk Management. How important is risk management? I guess it's always a question. I guess the question is, it's probably, on one hand, people think it's really important, to minimize the risk of a project. But it's also one of the most overlooked pieces. There's so many studies out there that show that we need to improve on this. Out of all the disciplines of project management, risk is important because it has such could have a potential negative impact on a project, but yet we just don't do it. So it definitely something that should, as a project manager, be one of the things that we should focus more on, but doesn't happen very often. Now, some of the benefits, if we would do it, well, you'd probably hope to anticipate and maybe avoid problems. Maybe not be surprised when a problem does occur. Maybe you'd be able to negotiate a new contract or something of that nature. So there are a lot of benefits for it, but because it's difficulty and people just have a hard time grasping how to do it. So because we all know that risk has a negative impact. Definition, Webster, says, the possibility of loss or injury. None of us like loss or injury. So and we can kind of understand potential problems that might occur and how they might impede, but usually negative risk management, it should be a form of insurance, a way to invest into the project to prevent problems from happening, so you can kind of increase the probability of success. But what are you going to do? But risk could also be positive. Some people, the people that are very open-minded and positive thinking could think, hey, I had a problem. Hey, that's a good thing. That's an opportunity for change, opportunity for success. But it also could be, impact on meeting projects. Seeing a change that could maybe affect the project of meeting some objectives. Maybe I can minimize the impact while maximizing the positive, and that's really the goal of project management. Is saying, I got positive and negatives part of risks, and I want to minimize the negative impact of risk. I want to maximize the positive that could happen with risk. You're walking that fine line. Now, there's some organizations out there that say you need to find a way to manage that. Now, of course, the issue becomes, how do I widen that scope of risk management so it isn't just kind of boxed into a small little place? It needs to probably be more pervasive in the planning of your project. So it's making sure that your project sponsors and your key people and the project management have good open working relationships, so they're open to talk about situations as they occur, because it definitely is a big part of that. So how do we start going through this? I mean, there's certain people like, hey, how much risk utility or risk tolerance? How much risk are you willing to handle? I mean, are you risk averse, that you want to avoid risk at all costs, or are you kind of that risk seeker? So you need to understand your risk and maybe your your key benefactors and your customers, where do they fall on this scale before you manage your project. Now, there are several processes in risk management. We're going to go through them in a little bit in detail. So you got planning risk management, identifying risks, a qualitative risk analysis, performing a quantitative, this one was qualitative, this one's quantitative, planning risk responses, and how do I control risks. So let's look at planning risk management. Planning risk management basically is a document. What are we going to, if an event happens, if a risk is triggered, what are we going to do? So we understand how our project sponsor is going to be able to, how they approach risk and how we're going to plan that detail. So every detail is taken care of. Some of the things that could be addressed in that plan are the methodology, the roles and responsibility, budget schedule, risk categories, probability, how are they going to be tracked, how are you going to document them. So a lot of things that could be addressed in that risk management plan. Now, one of the things that here, as far as how to play with this, is what kind of plans can I make? What contingency plans? And basically all the contingency plan is a predefined plan if an event occurs. Fallback plans are developed for risks that have high impact, but if the attempts to reduce the risk is not effective. So it's kind of like taking a step back. Contingency reverse or allowances, that just says, hey, I'm going to put plans or money aside that if a problem occurs, I just got this little bank account there. So it's kind of like, I'm not part of the cost of the project, but it may be something that the owner of the project wants to put set aside just in case. Now, there's definitely tons of sources of risk. There's several out there, whether they're market risk, financial, technology, people, structure, process. All the ones that I've usually run across end up probably falling more in line with technology and people. Are the two that I've run across the most. Usually the market doesn't impact a lot of the projects I've been on. Financially, once we agreed to what the cost is, I've never had to back off of a project because of financial. It's usually that we started a technology project and all of a sudden it was bigger or ran into a problem that we couldn't solve, or a vendor couldn't supply a computer in time. It becomes more of the issue. And then of course people, certain people could do tasks that they couldn't. They get sick, they get injured, they leave, a lot of other things. So how do I deal with key people leaving? One of the tools you can use is a risk breakdown structure, and basically it's just a hierarchy of potential categories of a project. Are they business, technical, organizational, project management, and then where do the problems potentially fall under? Are they competitors, suppliers? Are they technical? Are they hardware, software, the network? So just a way of organizing risks so that you can kind of get a handle on, which of these can you handle and which ones can't you do. Now, one of the questions is, how do I identify risk? It's basically understanding what potential events might hurt or help a particular project, and then understanding what's the possibility of those occurrences happening. And some of the tools that we can use is brainstorming, the Delphi technique, interviewing, or SWOT analysis. We'll get into those real quick. Brainstorming is just a technique where everybody just kind of throws out a bunch of ideas on the table without any judgment to try to get everything through, and then say, okay, now let's analyze each one of these suggestions and find one that we're willing to implement. We just got to be careful that you can get a lot of ideas with a brainstorming. If the group gets too big, ideas don't flow as well. So it has its own little idiosyncrasies, but it can be a good tool to get ideas on what to do if a situation occurs. The Delphi technique is just a way of how do I talk to a bunch of experts and get to a consensus, and what to do, because you've seen it on court cases and stuff that every lawyer brings their own expert, and that expert just so happens to agree with whatever side of are you the defendant or the plaintiff, to kind of say, hey, which one who's causing the problems here? Interviewing, fact-finding, face-to-face, phone interview, just kind of get more ideas. SWOT, SWOT is strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's going through each one of those, okay, what's the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and then we just kind of put those together and then say, what's the positive and negative, how is it going to impact the project? Risk register is just a way of recording all the risks that take place, the risk events, but it's just a document. Contents include, an identification number or rank as far as each of the events, a name, a description, if you're going to categorize the risks, and what was the root cause of it. You may say what triggered it, what are the potential responses, who owns it, if this does occur. Now, qualitative risk analysis is how do I assess the likelihood of an impact happening. Some of the tools that you can use is probability impact matrices, top 10 risk item, expert judgment. But basically each one of these is just a way of having a chart, a list that says, hey, list all the risks, label them, high, medium, and low, and then see where it all falls out as far as the matrix is concerned. The top 10 says, hey, what am I going to do? I'm going to look at the top 10 issues and then rank order them and see if that occurs. A watch list is just, hey, these are potentially low items, but they just want to make sure that you're still got your pulse on them, what's going on with them. Performing a quantitative analysis. Here I'm doing a little more of a numbers game, trying to figure out what's causing the issue. So I may do a decision tree, simulate, or do a sensitivity analysis. Decision trees are just a way of diagramming a situation. The expected monetary value, what is the cost of that? Simulation, there's several software tools out there. One of them is the Monte Carlo analysis that actually simulates potential problems. What's most likely, what's pessimistic, what's optimistic, and what's the probability that a situation is going to occur. A sensitivity analysis allows you to have certain technique that allows you to set some variables and say, what happens if this happens, and then change it. And Excel's a good place to do this. Now the question is, when risk happens, what am I going to do? Now you can try to do risk avoidance, acceptance, transference, or mitigation. But what happens if I get positive risk? I may exploit it. I may share it. I may enhance it. I may accept it. Now, when risk does happen, you may have what happens after that. Maybe I couldn't mitigate all the issues. It could cause other problems. And it may be a secondary risk is I implemented something, but that causes something else to occur. Controlling risk, the biggest one most of us play with is I need to work around this. I've got an opportunity, a problem. What am I going to do around it? How do I deal with an unplanned event? If there's no contingency plan and stuff, I pretty much have to decide what am I going to do. Am I going to add more people to it? Am I going to extend the date? Am I going to put a change request because the customer asked for more information, more money? But I'm going to update the project plan and other project documents to make sure that those workarounds are documented. So I'm hoping, I'm probably running out of time here, but this gives you an idea that project management does deal a lot with systems that allow you to try to manage risk, on your project. So hopefully this helps a little bit.